Good morning. I'm Mike McMullen, President of the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you for joining us for another one of our interesting webinars as we pivot life based on the COVID-19. We'd be doing a lot of these things in person, but I can say this, we will keep doing webinars now, even when things get back to normal. Even after we have lunches, it's a great way to get folks together to bring interesting topics like the one that we have today. So real fast, a couple of instructions. I think most of you who are on the call are probably Zoom experts because I see that you're all muted, which is great. Other than that, we'll have some questions during the course of the of what we're going to hear. If you have any questions that will come up, just put it in the chat box. Just like type in. I'm assuming you guys all know at the bottom of your screen there's a spot for chat. Chat in the question, and I'll field it. And if it looks like we should ask it right then, I'll interrupt Dennis and ask him, or we'll wait till the end and we'll bring it up then. A couple things I want to let you know about the Chamber, some upcoming events that we have. First off, the Carroll Biz Challenge 2020. This is our 9th year. Even in the midst of COVID-19, we still had 29 applications come in, and we picked the top 5, and they are going to be pitching at a live event, August 27th. We may not be able to have an audience there. We're selling tickets right now. We may have to reimburse if things don't change, but we'll at least have the event there. So you can watch it on CMC, and it's going to be a great event. We're all excited about it. We had a great group of folks apply. It was very hard to pick the top 5, so this should be really good. Next, Leadership Carroll. We're going to make that happen too. Leadership Carroll is going to happen. We're figuring things out. We've got backup plans to those. But the class of 2021, which starts in September, is full. So if you want to put an application, and you can. Could be on the waiting list in case somebody drops, so you could be the first for the next year. We have a webinar that we just added recently. We're doing this in partnership with our friends at the Community Media Center, who are amazing, and we're going to hear from them in a couple of minutes. It's going to be all about the Carroll Rebound grant money that's come in. Locally, we've brought in another $4 million that's going to be given out in grants to small businesses, and we're going to have Denise Beaver from Carroll County Economic Development come and talk all about that with us. And that'll be on July 8th. I believe it's 8:30 in the morning. Next, July 14th, we have another webinar, 8:30 in the morning. Our friends from M&T Bank are going to talk a little bit about the PPP grant forgiveness and things you've got to do to make sure that thing gets forgiven. So that should be very interesting. We have on July 23rd, a virtual PM connection coming. We're going to try to make it fun, get folks kind of together, laughing, seeing each other. I mean, Zoom, anyway that, I've heard folks say, oh, Zoom, I hate Zoom, I hate Zoom. I like it because without Zoom right now, we couldn't even see the folks that are on this call. So we're going to try to have some fun. So please do join us on July 23rd. Last but not least, August 18th is going to be, I believe it's our 3rd commissioner breakfast. So instead of getting together at the library to have breakfast, you need to get your eggs and your bacon, sit down in front of the screen, and dial in with us. It's going to be Commissioner Weaver, and that's going to be 8 to 9 a.m. It's going to be early, 8 to 9 on August 18th. So those are our upcoming events. I really do want to spend a couple seconds here and thank our friends at CMC. They are outstanding. They are amazing. They've done every webinar that we've done so far. They've recorded it like the one today. It's streaming live. I got to look at my notes. Channel 19. It's on their Facebook page. It's on YouTube. And it's also on their website, and it's on HD 1086. So it's all over the place. Then they will record it. They send us the link. We put it up on our site. These guys are great. They're working with so many folks in the community. They're probably busier now than they've been before because of all the need for these actual, Zoom calls. So I want to introduce to you to give a little shout out for CMC, Miss Sherry Taylor, who's the marketing director from CMC. Sherry, they're all yours.
Thanks, Mike. I'm standing in for Richard Turner, our executive director today, but I wanted to thank you and the Chamber for all that you do to support our local businesses and nonprofits. And we have really seen a great value from our Chamber membership and your extended network. So if someone's watching today and you're not a member, seriously, you got to join, take advantage of all the services and programs that the Chamber makes available to our community. It is well worth the investment. Dennis, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. Estate planning can be an intimidating topic for individuals under normal circumstances, but business owners have so many more additional considerations, and it's really basically the final step of a business plan. So I'm interested in hearing your insights and how the issues from the pandemic might affect those long-term plans. And Rich, Mike, you mentioned that we're streaming the broadcast across multiple platforms, but that wouldn't be possible without the rest of my teammates at the Community Media Center, who really have just rallied during COVID-19. Despite being closed to the public, under Richard's leadership, we really have increased our production services to the community, bringing live coverage to our municipalities, helping them keep their residents informed and connected, as well as working with local nonprofits like the Historical Society and the Carroll County Library, and especially the Chamber, who is sharing such timely and important information to our local businesses community. So thanks to the CMC team, you guys are all amazing. And since I am standing in for Richard today, I'm going to leave you with his traditional close. Mike encourages you to shop local, and we're going to ask that you watch local. In addition to the local cable channels, channel 19, 23, and HD 1086, you can see live programming on our website at carrollmediacenter.org. And to really stay up to date, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can see all the webinars that the Chamber's been featuring, as well as other great content that's being produced right here in Carroll County. So thanks, Mike. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Yeah, and that will, usually I say this at the end, but I'm going to say it right now while I've got everybody here. Keep your money local. Whenever you can, keep your money local. Go to the small guys if you can. These are the people, I say it all the time, that everybody goes to when they need help, when they need money for like some kind of a raffle or for an auction or whatever. Help to support them right now. This is a tough time. The way that things have been set up, it's like almost like the perfect storm to ship everyone towards Amazon and to shopping online. Sometimes you have to do that because there's some things you just can't get here locally. But if you're going to go online, I will say it's great. Go online if they're local businesses that you're going to shop from, because some of them sell stuff online. But other than that, keep your money in your pocket, go out to the place, buy your stuff, take care of the people who take care of you. So that being said, I'm going to move now to the main event, the reason why you're here. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to hear about today, because I'm getting to that age now where I need to be thinking about some of this stuff. And yeah, with 4 kids and 9 grandkids, I guess I need to be thinking about some of this stuff. So we're going to hear from Mr. Dennis Twigg, who's a lawyer with Hoffman, Comfort, Offutt, Scott, and Halstad, LLP. They are located in Westminster at 24 North Court Street. Aside from being an awesome lawyer, Dennis is also the current chair of the board for the Chamber. And I've had a lot of fun with him over the last 3 months. He's been a co-host with me and with Steve Lowe from 127 Creative of a little show we've done called Carroll Corona Carryout, which was designed to let the community see all the restaurants that are still open for carryout, even when they were shut down. Well, now most of them are open. Dennis loves local. He's been here for a long time. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and you're going to hear from him right now. So Dennis, I turn them over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Just to echo your sentiments, we've been very focused at the Chamber on local business in times of pivoting, into keeping them sort of in our minds. And I've just found that just calling places up and finding out what their deal is, and if it, sort of works with what our different protocols are. I've done shopping through FaceTime for stuff where someone was closed and they took me through their store. So there's all sorts of opportunities available, but that's not why you're here today. You're here today for me to put on my other hat, my hat as a lawyer. So I have been practicing law since 2009, almost entirely focused on estate planning, estate administration, elder law. I was in court more often when I was earlier in my practice, but I'm doing so much planning now, I just see myself in court yet less. And so we're going to focus on a whole bunch of different subjects here today, some of which are tried and true, things that really haven't changed. But towards the end of the seminar, I'm going to get into some things to consider in light of COVID-19 and sort of how legally we've had to pivot a little bit as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that I echo what Mike said, and that's if anyone has any questions, just let Mike know in chat. I've been places where people's job is to interrupt me, with opposing counsel. So if you have a question that's on the subject matter that I'm talking about, just stop. I'm easily able to go back and forth, and Michael, when it's appropriate, interject those questions. So don't be shy. I think that the big thing about estate planning is you have to realize this is a peace of mind practice. You are doing a plan to deal with some things that are difficult and unpleasant, but the alternative is worse, which is you don't have a plan and you're stuck with whatever the default rules are. The default rules aren't meant to be unfair, but they are uniform. So they don't necessarily fit every family circumstance. The biggest thing that people typically talk to me about are wills. And I'll get into why wills aren't the only thing in estate planning, but a will is a document that says when I pass away, this is what's going to happen to my stuff, right? And there's other things that can be involved too, but primarily that's what's going on. You can control who gets to be in charge of your kids if you have minor children, and you can set up other kind of planning things as well called trusts. But the will's big job, the job people think about, it says who is in charge of making sure where my assets go. The person in charge of your estate is called your personal representative. They're the person who are in charge of all that stuff. And that is a very important job where you don't really want to play favorites. You want to find the person who's good at the job that it entails, which is managing money, keeping people informed, and following through and being responsible. In addition to wills, there's other things you can put together that manage assets either while you're alive or when you pass away, and those are called trusts. You can make a trust while you're alive. You can make a trust in your will if you have someone that has a health problem that precludes them from inheriting, or they're under the age of majority, in which case they can't take legal title to assets. Trusts are not a one-size-fits-all thing. There's a whole bunch of different trusts that we do, and they matter a lot in terms of when we have a specific circumstance that calls for them. I can get more into them, but basically what it is they can substitute for a will, or they can be a way you can have your cake and eat it too, or you can set aside funds for someone and have them under management and not interfere with their benefits or other scenarios that they have going on. The biggest area where like a trust is a necessity is if you have anyone in your family that is on government assistance or special needs. And, you know, either kids or sometimes people have grandkids that you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I have friends that children on the autism spectrum, and they're not sure if they're going to need help or if they're going to be sort of in a normal working environment. And if you don't have that stuff set up, and they are in certain programs, like great community programs we have here, like Target and ARC, and you give them a bunch of money, their benefits would then be null and void because they now financially don't qualify. So it's extremely important in those scenarios that you make sure that you've done your homework there. The biggest thing I think that people don't realize about the estate planning element is you come and talk to a lawyer and you set all this stuff up, but your estate and your trusts only control those assets where the title puts them in control of the trust and the estate. That's a confusing way of saying that title trumps estates. And if you have a joint account or TOD or a beneficiary, those things take precedent over everything else. And you think about it, that makes sense. If you and your spouse share a joint checking account and one of you dies, the other one has control over it. That's not that controversial. But if you play that thing out and you visit me and 10 years later, you've now at the bank just sort of over time made all of your assets go by beneficiary to different people, you could have your will not control what happens to your estate. And if you plan for that, then that's fine. But if you haven't planned for that, it's a big problem. And probably every year, I have 4 or 5 occasions where there's big mistakes made in title designation and family members get left out. And look, 80-90% of the time, I'm happy to say that the rest of the family will pull together and do a bunch of work and get everyone back involved. But they're not legally required to. And that's a big deal because you don't want to make it so that you're relying on your family to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. You want to set up a plan that sets them up for success. The analogy I like to use is your estate plan is you're setting the table for your family to have a good transition after something happens to you. And if you set the table nicely, you're encouraging a relatively calm event. But if it's a mess, you're encouraging a food fight. And if that's the case, everyone loses. And I have those too. And a lot of times it's a result of lack of planning. Another big thing is with titling to assets is that, if you have a life insurance policy that goes to someone on one of these government programs, it can also affect eligibility. So you have to really keep that in mind. Recently in 2019, for those of us that own businesses and have retirement accounts, something passed called the CARES Act. And this changed how retirement works. It used to be that your spouse, it still is, you and your spouse can move your retirement back and forth and have the same withdrawal rules. But the rule used to be that your children could preserve your retirement asset for a long time and take very small slices of income. That time span has been compressed. You now have 10 years to withdraw from retirement if you're a non-spouse that inherits it. And so that changes what people are doing with their retirement accounts, because depending on your children's age relative to you and what happens, sometimes people can be getting these retirement inheritances the peak of their career. And so the slice that the government's taking out is much, much larger than it would have been before. So I think that has caused people to reconsider how they're going to do those kinds of things. And retirement accounts, one of those places where almost everyone uses beneficiaries. So it just requires being abreast of the rules and making sure you consider things. And to the extent you want to be charitable, retirement accounts are even more than ever the place to do it, because charities don't pay income taxes. The other document, I've focused a lot on trusts and wills, which are the documents that cover what happens if something happens to you when you pass away. The other documents that I think in some ways can be more important are Power of Attorney, Healthcare Directive. If you don't have those, it can even be more stressful, because what these two documents do is they make sure that if something happens to you while you're alive, you've set up someone, in the case of the Power of Attorney, that has the legal and financial authority to handle your affairs. So imagine that your spouse has died and you haven't done one of these papers, and you end up in the hospital and then admitted to a nursing home, and your kids find all these bills and they're not on any of the bank accounts and there's no power of attorney and you're unconscious. They may be coming to me and I may be telling them that we have nothing we can do right now, and the situation is going to continue to deteriorate financially because we have no control over the assets. That is a bad place to be in. And every so often, I find that we are in those situations. So that is not exactly a good place to be. The other document is called a Healthcare Directive. Healthcare directives are where you say, if I can't make medical decisions, someone's going to make medical decisions on my behalf. And you also include what's called a living will, which says, in a worst case scenario, here's what I want to have happen in an end of life circumstance. Both of these forms are statutorily laid out. There's no secret to them. You can find them in the Maryland statutes. The biggest thing is interpreting them and making sure you get the right form for you and you have the right language, or that you, and in the case of businesses, that you make sure you've taken your business into account. A lot of times what I'll do is, if someone owns a business, I'll ask them what their operating agreement, if they're an LLC, says, because the operating agreement may already disperse that decision-making and signature authority. But if you don't have that, we need to consider what happens if you're sick and someone needs to sign something, right? And that is all very important.
Dennis, I have a question, actually.
Yes, go ahead.
Asking, are there sample forms that we can complete and discuss with our spouse prior to an appointment with you or with a lawyer?
So everyone works differently. I have like a little questionnaire that I do. I always hand it out with the proviso that don't be intimidated by the homework. Sometimes I give it out and people are bashful because they haven't gotten time to fill out all the answers. But yeah, there's like 15 or 20 common things that come up, and not all of them apply to everybody. But I have a form where I go over that kind of stuff and I say, here's some of the stuff's just biographical. what are your names? Where do you live? Who are your kids? Who are your grandkids, right? And some of it is sort of like, well, what do you do? Who's in charge? What assets do you have? In general, with all this sort of stuff, the biggest thing is information and making sure people know what's going on. If you do all these papers and your kids don't know where it is and they don't know that I exist, sometimes this stuff can sit around in a desk for 2 weeks and valuable time can be wasted. So it becomes very important to make sure that you share it if it's appropriate. And the other thing is you got to make sure you have the right person in charge. The person who's managing the money might not be the person who's talking to doctors, right? And so you have to make sure that you're clear about that and that you're comfortable with it. Because like I said, this is a peace of mind exercise. And if at the end of the day, you are uncomfortable with who you put in charge, you probably don't have peace of mind yet. And so that becomes really important. I mentioned earlier with these incapacity documents that what if you don't have them? What if you don't have them, right? Then the alternative is called guardianship. And guardianship may be something you've heard of more. And what a guardianship is someone goes to the circuit court and they say, this person cannot make either medical or legal and financial decisions, or both. And we need to appoint someone to be in charge of them. And that sounds well and good, but that involves, you need to probably have a lawyer to fill out your doctors. You need to fill out your paperwork. You need to get doctors to certify that the person who you're getting the guardianship for needs it. The court appoints that person a lawyer. If they're having a bad day and they say, no, I don't want this person in charge, I don't even know who they are, then you now have a trial and you have to go through all that stuff. So this is not a sit in the lawyer's office and sign paperwork sort of thing. This is a court procedure, and there could be contention about who is in charge. Different kids could disagree with who's in charge or what decisions being made, and it's never as simple as making decisions ahead of time. But it is there as a last resort. It is more time consuming, more expensive, and more difficult. In light of what's been going on, nursing homes have been in the news. And one of the big things that before all this happened that people worry about is like paying for nursing homes. And if you think about it, it should be obvious to everyone that not everyone that can afford a nursing home is thrown out of a nursing home, right? If you're there 5 years and the nursing home is $10,000 a month, and that means it's a $600,000 bill, not everyone can afford that. And if it's more, then very few people can afford that. And with that, the reason why is there's a program called medical assistance, which is a partnership between the state and the federal government to pay for people's nursing home beds in certain circumstances. The biggest circumstance that's relevant to this discussion is like, of course, you medically need to have it. That's not really the issue. You can't just go there for a spa day. You need to financially qualify for it. And so what you can do is before you need a nursing home, you can make planning decisions with trusts and other tools to protect assets against healthcare costs, whether it be your house, your personal assets, or whatever. And the biggest reason to do that is A, you don't want your spouse to be destitute because of your long illness, and B, to leave a legacy to your family, friends, community, or whatever. These solutions are never straightforward. It normally involves like putting these assets into the control of another person to some extent for your benefit. So this is not just like something that you should take lightly, but it's something that I discuss more and more with people because of the fact that we're not really worried about taxes. In the state of Maryland right now, and I'll get into that later, right now, not many people owe estate taxes because it's only if you have more than $5 million per spouse in the state of Maryland and $11 million federally. So that's a relatively small segment of the population. So you don't have to worry about typically the government coming and taking money off the top, but you do have to worry about people getting sick and having the money eaten away from illness. And so sort of medical assistance planning has become more of a focus for everybody. The biggest things that have changed in these past 3 months is if you have family members that have health problems, you always have stress. But it's now with the visitation restrictions, you have to really make sure you understand what's going on. I've been a healthcare agent, I've been a power of attorney, and I've assisted my parents with my grandparents. And one of the biggest things that I found was helpful was like physically going to the facility. Well, a lot of my clients can't be seen right now because of all the different nursing home restrictions with COVID. And so you really have to have your paperwork in order, and you have to have tough conversations with family and friends, whoever's in charge now, because they may not be able to get that kind of contact with you, because there might be one tech with an iPad that gets to put you in touch with someone every 4 days by video, and you're not in the best, you or your family member aren't in the best shape anyway. And that's a tough medium to make these kinds of decisions and make these kind of calls. Maryland has done a few things to help out because this is so unprecedented. There are rules to sign documents where the witnesses are virtual, like can't be Zoom, but it can be other things where you're just watching someone sign and then you sign on their behalf. Even though that rule is out there, I am not using it often, except in extreme circumstances, because here's the bottom line about these sorts of documents. If you ever need them, you want the lawyer to say, I know this is going to work. And I can't tell you this is going to work because I haven't had every bank in Carroll County look at this document with the extra steps you have to take. Should it work? Yes. We have the remote witnessing requirements. But even now, for people who have health concerns, I'm still doing drive-through legal documents. I'm going up to the curb. I'm wearing gloves and a mask. I'm handing them papers, standing from afar and watching them. And that's still traditional witnessing. But I did have someone who is in a facility that's totally locked down, isn't likely to get out soon, didn't update their papers, exactly teetering on the exact sort of scenario and disaster that I've been warning about in this call. And the only way we could do it is one of these virtual things. And we did it. I've signed it. I've done it. And I'm just crossing my fingers that it works. The other thing I think that everyone should be sort of keeping their ear to the ground about is that we're going to have a lot of uncertainty with the rules and taxes. I think that everyone has started to see articles about tax revenue shortfalls. When you shut down businesses for months, there's just less sales tax. People are making less money. And these things all start to add up. And so there's definite potential for either the federal or state government to change tax rules. So come the next legislative session, all the advice I just gave about taxes could absolutely be out of date. And that's just the reality of dealing with these kinds of crises. If your income tax goes up, your property tax goes up, people notice it. It's right away. If estate taxes happen, you're taxing dead people and they don't vote. And so it's a popular way when these crises happen to kind of raise revenue. And so you just have to be aware of that. The other thing is that I can also foresee that there might be changes to the way medical assistance eligibility and nursing home payments start working, because that's a big cost, and they may start figuring out ways to pass that on more to the family and everything. When I started this presentation, I said the goal of estate planning is peace of mind. And the biggest thing that you'll do in a good estate planning appointment is you'll bring your expertise about your family and your situation, and you'll find someone who has expertise about planning. And you'll talk about how those things come together into something that puts you and your family in a position to not worry about this anymore. The best result of this is afterwards you go to bed and you stop worrying about it for a while, because hopefully you don't need it. Hopefully you don't need it soon. But if you don't have the proper protocols in place and something happens, it may not be your problem, but you're probably leaving the people closest to you with a bigger problem than they would have had otherwise. Because already, of course, if something like this happens, you're sick and you need a healthcare agent or power of attorney, or you've passed away. And those are both enormous things to deal with. But the burden is even worse when there's a lawyer saying to them, I don't know what was going to happen exactly. This is kind of tough because we don't have a plan in place. And, it happens, and I get people through that too. But those conversations, I can tell you, are a lot more difficult than saying, here's how it goes, boom, boom, boom. Looks like everything is set up and squared away. So I try not to dawdle in these things. My attention span is much worse now as a grown person than it was as a student. So I hope you found that useful. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Dennis, I'll ask. I don't see any questions right now, but don't forget, if you guys have any, just put them in the chat area. But I'll ask a question. Could you embellish a little bit more on how we protect the equity in our homes as we get older, if we get sick? I mean, you were mentioning trusts. I remember hearing at one point, and I'm not an expert at this by any means, but that there's a certain amount of years prior to you getting sick that you have to put your home in trust. Will you explain that a little bit more? How does that work? Please.
Absolutely. So medical assistance has a financial test where they say, do you meet certain financial criteria to get medical assistance? And one of the things they do is they look to see if you've made any gifts within 5 years, meaning if you've got millions of dollars and you go in the hospital and then you write a check to your kids or your siblings or whoever, and now you have $0 in your name, it doesn't mean that the government is going to suddenly say, well, you're poor, we're paying for your bed at a nursing home. They check over 5 years to see 5 years if you've made any patterns or gifts that would be problematic. Meaning, you write your grandchild a $100 birthday check, it's not a problem. If you write your grandchild a $250,000 birthday check, it is a problem. So the best thing to do is, before these problems become really significant, you gift things to these trusts, and the trusts then are in place just in case you need that kind of stuff. That doesn't always work out, right? I would not say to someone who's in their 60s and healthy that you should put all of your assets in a trust and put your kids in charge of it, right? Like, you don't want your kids to be totally in charge of your money at that point. It's not really their place to tell you what to do with it, right? So you have to strike that balance. The other thing is that you can give it away to individuals, but I never recommend that, because even if someone swears up and down they're going to give it back if you need it, the real problem is that if they get in a massive car accident and you've given them a house, that house is theirs. Doesn't matter the fact that they meant to give it back to you if you get sick. That's on their balance sheet, and that's an asset that can be held against their liabilities for bankruptcy or anything else out there. So
let me ask you this, just to kind of, so that I'm so if somebody was worried about the equity in their home,
mm-hmm.
The deal is you'd have to actually gift your home to one of your kids, and then they let you live there. It's not like it's in your name and theirs, or how does that work?
So there's a few, for homes specifically, you can do irrevocable trust where your children are the trustees and there's a right to live there for the rest of your life. You can do a life estate deed, a life estate deed without powers that says my spouse or my spouse and I, we own this property and we have the right to live there for all of our lives. And when we both pass away, it goes to X, Y, and Z, right? So you can do that too. So they don't have the right to hustle you out. But if you decide to sell a property in either of those circumstances, you need to have participation of the people on the trust or the deed. So you're not just totally in charge of your own destiny anymore. And I'm going to be honest, most people get to a point in their life where they're comfortable with that. They're 80 something, they're thinking about downsizing anyway. Someone gets a diagnosis that says, yeah, I mean, I'm not needing this stuff yet, but I thought I would never, but it's starting to get hard for my significant other to take care of me. And I would I would hate to have that happen, but I really hate to think about the fact that there's not going to be anything left for my kids afterwards. And then those conversations start, and we can work on those solutions.
So one more question on this route. So that would mean I would assume if I'm like 85 or so, I go to the doctor, they say, Mike, you got like a month left to live. That's probably too short of a time to sign the home over to a kid. Is there a time frame involved, or can you, and also the home has to be totally paid off, I would imagine, right?
So if there's a mortgage note, they could do an acceleration clause, but most of the time, if you're paying the mortgage, a lot of times they don't care. But yeah, it's much better if it's all paid off. A month to live, you probably actually don't have a long nursing home stay.
Oh, that's true then too. If they said, look, you've got two years or whatever.
But the reason, the really important thing is you got to think about your spouse, because if your spouse is also sort of in failing health, and you maybe are like a symbiotic duo where like one of you does the physical work and one of you does sort of the books, and one of your health starts to fail, you could still be looking at doing that, not necessarily thinking that you're going to make it through the 2 year, that 5 year period. But as long as you don't apply for medical assistance within 5 years, that time starts ticking. And so you might have your retirement and your bank account and everything else that you're using to pay for this facility. And then when you are done with that, the house will have been protected at that point, right? So like, it's better, if you're not sure, you're better off talking to someone, because they may have an idea and they may look at your circumstance and say, here's what we could do. They may have an opinion about whether or not it's worth doing. On the other hand, if you don't ask, then you'll never get the advice. And when you're looking and when you're staring down the barrel of a $10,000 monthly bill, it's just peanuts to talk to a lawyer for an hour, to be perfectly honest.
All right, that's excellent. All right, do we have any questions out there? I've asked a couple myself. Any questions, anybody? I'm not seeing any. Oh, here's one here. This is a question that maybe these people need to contact you personally. They're asking about what are your rates and how are they determined? It's probably something you need to speak to folks about on like a one-on-one basis, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is my general practice is that I meet with you, we talk about what you're going to do, and then we talk about what the cost is and everything else. Everyone has a different kind of circumstance, so it's hard to say exact rates, Mike, right?
Okay. Maybe you could
I'm happy to talk to any. I don't know, is my if my flyer goes to everybody, I've got all my contact information on that.
Well, if you want to give folks your phone number now. I mean, normally you're here to educate people about this, not so much to drum up business yourself, but if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what is your phone number? And Terry Smack may have a question. I see she's come back in a different light. So Terry, hang on one second. Dennis, give your phone number, then we'll let Terry ask her question.
My phone number is 410-848-4444. You'll get a hold of the receptionist. She'll direct you through to me. But Terry, you had a question. Happy to see you and answer it.
So, I have several business entities, plus my personal wealth. Is that done separately? I have a will, but of course it was done way before I started my businesses. I have several business partners, and I'm thinking back in my head about how the operational documents were, prepared. So, I'll get those together. But do you incorporate that into one? Is that how you do that when you have multiple businesses? So
the estate plan looks at your life holistically. So it's not necessarily that, you're going to have one lawyer who does both, but you might have an estate attorney who takes your business documents and puts it all together and says, okay, this entity's built this way, this entity's built this way, this entity's built this way. If you get sick, who's signing what for the tag business, right? And all that kind of stuff. And you're having that big picture sort of thing. And a lot of times with businesses too, you may have some sort of instructions about selling the business or an option to purchase by the partners, whether that's in the business documents themselves or whether that's in the estate, right? And it really depends. It's a very, very, I guess the law term is fact specific. It's idiosyncratic because if you have a bunch of different things that own a bunch of different ways, there's no one size fits all. But your estate has to take consideration of these business things, because if your estate says, okay, I give everything to X, Y, and Z, my kids, and your business partners are a whole bunch of different people, and there's no real plan, and some of these businesses you own minority stakes and some of you own majority stakes, you're much better off giving some instruction about like, okay, here's how these kinds of transitions work. Some of these businesses may not be suitable just to hand off to kids because they require some expertise and some experience, and some are. And so that sort of thing where you have to have your business and your estate planning work hand in glove.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have any other questions at this point? It's been very informative. This has really been good.
Well, I appreciate everyone that's tuned in now or in the future. And thank you for the opportunity. And I hope you all found this informative. And Mike, thank you for inviting me.
Dennis, thanks again. Could you give us your phone number one last time?
Sure. It's 410-848-4444.
All right, thank you. Dennis, thanks for your time. CMC, thank you guys for all you guys do. I'm glad all of you were able to join us. If you found this to be of some worth to you, tune into our other webinars, and also let your friends know that they can watch this. It's going to be on our website. CMC is going to have it as well. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful Independence Day. Enjoy yourself. Stay healthy. Be kind to one another. We're going to get through this COVID thing together. Thank you guys so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.